Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So it has been a very fun and exciting spoiler season, but unfortunately, well, all good things must come to an end. Or maybe actually fortunately for me, so I can get back to my regular sleep schedule. Yeah. Regardless, we've had some really good times this spoiler season, haven't we? You know, like when you watched that episode on A Ruth Tormented Prophet. You remember that one? That was a good one. Wait, you haven't watched that one? Well, go watch it. Well, not until after you watch this one, though, okay? And don't you remember when I did all those Scooby-Doo impersonations in the Jinkies episode? Yeah, those were great times, weren't they? Like Zoink Scoobs! Real Roinks! Or how about the time I sang some Guess Who's Back again? It's Edgar. Edgar's back. Remember that? That was good too. But we are literally ending spoiler season with a bang with Hullbreaker Horror. And this is definitely a card that made me say, "Holy Kraken!" the second that I saw it. So what in the world does this crustacean from the deep do, and why should you be afraid of it? Well, if it's on your side. If it's on your side, you should not be afraid of it. Or maybe you should be. Regardless, what does it do? Well, let's jump into it to find out. Hullbreaker Horror is an absurdly powerful card. It's a 7/8 Kraken Horror with flash, and it can't be countered, and it costs 5 blue. So first up, play this 7/8 whenever you want, and your opponents can't counter it. Cool. More importantly, though, whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Oh my goodness, this is an absolutely gross finisher from the depths of... We're Innistrad, I guess, right? We're in Innistrad. From the depths of Innistrad. So this thing is a massive body. Again, a 7/8. Yes, it does cost 7 mana, but still, you can flash it in out of nowhere. It can't be countered, so your opponents can't stop it. And then on top of that, when you cast any spell after that, you get the option of either bouncing a spell or a non-land permanent. What in the world? I mean, again, it's kind of crazy when you look back to how, Magic cards used to be. If you had, a 7 mana creature, it did have maybe some decent power and toughness, but again, it had like a massive downside to it. And if someone from back in the early 90s or, late 90s or whatever would see this monstrosity, they'd be like, you've got to be kidding. And also, this is a rare. It's somehow not even a mythic rare. How? Good luck to your opponents trying to stop this thing because, again, they can't stop it from coming into play. They can't counter it. And you can do it whenever. So you just throw it down and say, best of luck, opponents, because now if you even try to take it out, well, I can just cast any old spell. It had to be an instant, most likely. But yeah, any old spell. And then I'm going to bounce your spell back to your hand. So try again. Or, if you don't have enough fuel to actually, keep bouncing spells back to players' hands, you can just bounce this back to your hand because you can return any target non-land permanent back to his owner's hand. It doesn't have to be an opponent's permanent. This thing is an absolutely absurd finisher that, yeah, I can see quite a few decks out there just salivating right now being like, yeah, this is gonna be fun. For me. Not for my opponents, but for me. No, I'm not saying I don't like this card. In fact, I think it's pretty awesome. I just think that it's really, really powerful and maybe a bit pushed. I mean, it most definitely reminds me of one of my favorite cards that was budgeted at one point and unfortunately no longer is. Well, let's get to that one really quick to talk about the comparisons. And that would of course be Tidespout Tyrant, a 5/5 flying djinn for 5 blue, so 1 mana more, and it's smaller, but it's a flyer. Still, it has whenever you cast a spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand. So unlike our brand new Crustacean, well, this does not have flash. It can be countered. It costs 1 more. Again, it is smaller, though this does have flying. It doesn't give you the option of what to bounce, whether that's a spell that your opponent controls or a permanent. But this one, actually, unlike the new Kraken, can bounce any permanent, so it can bounce lands. Now, obviously, that is a key difference, and you know what? They probably should have just allowed that with this new Kraken, because if you're at the point where you can just control the board with the thing to basically bounce everything your opponents have, you might as well just put them out of their misery by bouncing their lands too, and then they concede, and then you pick up and you play another game, instead of you just, controlling the board with your Kraken that can bounce spells and non-land permanents. So, yeah, your opponents are going to be pretty miserable at that point, so they might just concede anyways. But, yeah, just as Tidespout Tyrant can be a fantastic finisher and a fantastic combo piece, which we'll talk about that here in a bit, I think that this Hullbreaker Horror is going to, well, fill a similar role, and maybe even a better one. And actually, you don't even have to, you don't even have to replace the Tidespout Tyrant. You can just have basically now a second, better in some circumstances, Tidespout Tyrant, worse in some circumstances, but you can have 2 of these now, essentially, so have fun. I mean, this new Kraken might just be one of Blue's best finisher creatures out there. I mean, up to this point, some somewhat similar ones that we've seen are like Pearl-like Ancient, Nezahal Primal Tide, and Sphinx the Final Word. And, I mean, all of these have, they can't be countered, they cost the exact same. So it's kind of like that, hey, I'll get this big threat down at the very end, but none of these have really been kind of the exact finisher that this new Kraken is definitely going to be. Obviously, all of these, are good in certain situations in their own right, and Nezahal especially is incredibly hard to deal with and can provide you an absurd amount of value, and I love old Nezi, but yeah, none seem quite to pack the punch that Hullbreaker Horror can in the right deck. I mean, just picture this, okay? You flash this new card in right before your turn, surprising your opponents, and then you just start casting really small blue cantrips like, Brainstorm or Opt or Consider, that all, draw a card to replace themselves. You've obviously got enough mana to cast multiple of these in a single turn, so you can just start bouncing non-land permanents. Or maybe you just, obviously, you can hold back your mana and wait till your opponent's turns where they try to cast spells, then you bounce them back to their hand, and if your Hullbreaker Horror is ever in trouble, well, you just bounce it back to your hand, and then try again at a later time. Again, with the right deck, it's going to be really hard to ever get through the Hullbreaker Horror, and your ability to just bounce whatever you need to, whatever threats on the board, and if they ever try to recast it, you just bounce it back to their hand again while they're casting it. It's crazy. Now, I know that this next card that I'm going to bring up is super niche, and definitely not for a lot of decks out there, but I think it's pretty funny. But View from Above was definitely a card that came to mind the second that I saw this commander, and don't ask me why, but yes, this is a card that came to mind. It says, target creature gains flying until end of turn. If you control a white permanent, return View from Above to its owner's hand. So yeah, obviously we need a white permanent in play, but yeah, this in combination with Hullbreaker Horror, I just said Hullbreaker. Sorry. I'm sorry if I've been doing that. Hullbreaker Horror. This is not Hullbreacher, it is Hullbreaker. Regardless, still a very powerful card. Yeah, this in combination with it would basically just be, hey, 2 mana, bounce anything. Spell, non-land permanent, whatever you need to bounce, just bounce it. And of course, if you had something like a Jace's Sanctum in play for some cost reduction, well, now it just costs 1 mana to do this over and over and over again. And speaking of doing things over and over and over again, like Tidespout Tyrant, this card easily combos with certain things, like, say, Soul Ring and Everflowing Chalice. In case you've never played Commander, Soul Ring is an artifact that costs 1 and taps for colorless. Basically, a mana rock that costs 1 and taps for 2. Yeah, this thing is absurd, and pretty much is banned everywhere, but not in Commander, because reasons that I'm not going to get into today. Regardless, with Hullbreaker in play, you play your Soul Ring. Maybe you bounce an opponent's non-land permanent. Cool. Then you tap your Soul Ring for 2. You play your Everflowing Chalice for 0. We're not going to kick it here, okay? And then we're going to target our Soul Ring with that trigger to bounce it back to our hand. Then we utilize one of the 2 mana that we had floating from the Soul Ring to recast Soul Ring. When we cast it, thanks to Hullbreaker, we're going to target the Everflowing Chalice to bounce that back to our hand. Then we tap Soul Ring for 2 more, and now we've got 3 mana in our mana pool. Then we cast Everflowing Chalice for free, targeting Soul Ring. We do this over and over and over again, basically just generating infinite mana well, infinite colorless mana, but still infinite mana. So if you've got, an X spell like maybe a Blue Sun Zenith, have fun either drawing, your entire library or, drawing an opponent out. You've got plenty of ways to win from there. And yeah, this combination works now with both Tidespout Tyrant and our brand new Hullbreaker Horror, so have fun. And of course, I should mention, obviously, there are other mana rocks out there, other, cards out there that cost 0, like Everflowing Chalice, that you could utilize instead of the Chalice, but it's a good budget example, okay? But speaking of examples, of course, this massive threat from the deep can fit alongside other massive threats from the deep like Inkwell Leviathan, Stormtide Leviathan, and Scourge of Fleets. Yeah, Sea Monster tribal decks out there, rejoice, because you have yet another massive baddie that is just absolutely scary. I mean, this might be the scariest sea monster out there at this point. And yeah, that's saying something because Inkwell Leviathan is, a 7/11 with Island Walk, Trample, and Shroud, so that can be deadly. And Stormtide Leviathan is an 8/8 with Island Walk that makes all lands islands and makes it so that creatures without flying or Island Walk can't even attack, so good luck to your opponents with their ground creatures. And yeah, Scourge of Fleets in a, mono blue deck with a bunch of islands basically is just going to bounce back all of your opponent's creatures back to their hand. And it's a 6/6 on top of that, so that's not too bad either. I mean, recently we've got some really deadly, sea monsters like Spawning Kraken and Serpent of Yawning Depths, and I still would probably put this brand new one above each of them. And Spawning Kraken makes it so that whenever one of your sea monsters deals combat damage to a player, you get a 9/9 Kraken. So your sea monsters just basically give you more sea monsters, and that's still not quite as threatening somehow. At least to me. Again, I should say this is just my opinion, but yeah. And Serpent of Yawning Depths essentially makes your creatures unblockable, unless you're playing against another sea monster tribal deck, but yeah, basically unblockable. And yet, I would still put our brand new Holy Kraken card above these. So, yeah. I mean, it might be pretty obvious at this point, but now I'm going to talk about some commanders that might want Hullbreaker Horror. First up, how about a commander that many players utilize as a sea monster tribal commander with a Rixsmithy Slumbering Isle? Rixsmithy is a 12/12 that essentially is a land to start with 5 slumber counters on it, and basically, you just cast spells to remove slumber counters from it, and it can tap for green-blue. So, yeah, this thing is massive, doesn't cost much at all, and over time, you're going to make it, into that 12/12 creature that's just going to potentially dominate the board. But keep in mind that literally if you're hitting all your land drops, let's say turn 2 you ramp, maybe with a rampant growth or something like that, turn 3 you cast this, turn 4 you hit your land drop, and if you really want to, you can play our new Kraken on turn 4. Now that might not be the right play again because you might want to be set up enough so that you can cast other spells to at least save your big baddie, but maybe you just want to go for it, okay? Regardless, obviously another option for a Sea Monster Tribal Commander is a brand new one with Runo Stromkirk, or should I say Krothis Lord of the Deep, on the backside. Yeah, this commander could be absolutely deadly with this new card. First up, it can help you flip Runo Stromkirk if it's on top of your library. Secondly, and more importantly, when Krothis Lord of the Deep attacks, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. But if it's a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, you get 2 of those tokens. And yes, obviously, Hullbreaker Horror is a Kraken. So we're getting 2 more of those, and that's just gross. So with 3 of them in play, now whenever we cast just 1 spell, we can bounce up to 3 spells and or non-land permanents. Gross. Speaking of gross, hey, it's Urza! There are already Urza Lord High Artificer decks out there that utilize Tidespout Tyrant with that kind of Cheerios combo where you make infinite mana. And essentially with Urza, again, you can just put all that mana into, the pay 5, shuffle your library, exile the top card until the end of turn. You can play that card without paying its mana cost. If you've got infinite colorless mana, it doesn't matter what color it is, you just dump all that mana into it, play your entire library, and win. So now on top of Tidespout Tyrant, you also have the Hullbreaker Horror if you really want it. But yeah, even a commander like Varen, Voice of Duality, might want to consider this as, that high-end finisher. She has, if you casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers additional time. Basically, yeah, now whenever you cast any instant or sorcery, you get that trigger twice, so have fun bouncing permanents at an incredible rate, again, non-land permanents, and good luck for your opponents ever getting a spell through. And while we're at it, why not just double up on it as well with Volo Guide to Monsters? Volo has, whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. Basically, you get a copy token of it. So again, what's better than one of these? Two! So, have fun. And yeah, because of that, I'm also going to bring up Orvar the All-Form, and this can just get absolutely disgusting with this commander. I mean, maybe more disgusting than all the other ones put together. Probably not, but still really disgusting. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. So Orvar incentivizes you to cast a bunch of cheap spells that target something. So again, you just flash this new Kraken out right before your turn, and again, it can't get countered. Then, you untap your lands, and you cast multiple spells targeting it, and then you just make more and more copies of it, getting more and more triggers to bounce all of your opponent's things. And yes, your opponents are never going to recover from that. So again, gross. Yeah, this is quite the card to end spoiler season on. And again, there's a reason that I named this episode Holy Kraken. Because, yeah, just look at it. Again, this finisher cannot be countered, can come out of nowhere, can stop your opponents from dealing with it in multiple ways, and can just demolish your opponent's boards. I'm literally tripping over my words because this thing is just... it's everything that is just absolutely gross and amazing at the same time. So yeah, have fun with this second, better in many ways, slightly worse in one way, Tidespout Tyrant. And best of luck to your opponents for ever getting to deal with it because, yeah, it's going to be really tough. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are. And as always, thanks again and have a good one.